Hi, this is Tony Davis for See You There Promotions, and I'm talking this afternoon to Mike Ross. Good afternoon, Mike. How are you?
Hello, Tony. I'm well, thank you for asking. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Thanks very much for giving out your time to talk to me.
Pleasure.
Um, we're sort of going to talk a bit about a gig that you're going to play in Hastings, but I thought before we got to that, we talk a bit more about you and your career and how you interact in the music business. So
Absolutely. Yeah, pleasure's all mine.
um, I know that you're based in Brighton now, but I think you come from the northeast originally, don't
That's
you?
right. Yeah, I'm a Durham lad originally. Yeah.
Okay. So, how'd your career get started then? Wandering around Durham with a guitar under your arm?
Yeah, kind of. Um, well, I always was a big fan of music from a very young age. My mum tells stories about using the putting the. My dad had a long cable on one of the stereo speakers, so he could play it outside when he's working outside, and he used to put that on my under my pram, so the bass vibrations from Rolling Stones and Beatles records what rocked me to sleep, kind of thing.
Okay.
So that came in very useful later when I rediscovered a lot of these records because I knew the words. That was weird, but yeah, I knew the words to songs like "Let It Bleed" and "Come Together" and things like that. It just kind of
Yeah.
came out of a memory that I didn't recall having. So I was always into music massively. Um, when I was young, and then I got into like Lego and Transformers and whatever when I was a little bit older. And also like part of my dad's record collection, he had an AC/DC album, and I got really into that, Back in Black. And then I got like a poster of Angus with his SG on, and I had that up on the bedroom wall. And I started thinking that would be cool. And so my mom, bless her, when I was about 13 and a half, she bought me a guitar. And then everything changed really from that moment, just sitting there kind of trying to coax these credible sounds out of it, and listening to records, and I had some lessons for a while, but mostly it was people like Jimi Hendrix and Keith Richards taught me how to play the guitar. AC/DC was a bit hard, but I was able to find things in these other leagues that kept me going, Credence and things like that. And then I was playing in bands from 16. Yeah, so from age 16 I started
Okay.
playing other people's songs mostly. I was writing a little bit by myself. I was in like a bluesy cover band, but we did songs by the Doors and Animals and stuff as well. And they were all quite a bit older than me. The drummer was probably about 40, and the youngest other member was maybe 10, 15 years older than me. So I was very much the baby of the group. And I didn't really know. I didn't really know how much of a tit I was being. I was just playing the guitar. Thinking this is
So,
great.
so
And
sorry, I was just going
it's
to say,
okay.
what age? What age were you when you sort of wrote the first song that you thought, yeah, that's a good song for me?
Hmm. Well, good songs took a while. um, Songs from about 16, well, no, maybe 17.
Okay.
But 16th year, 17, between 16 17 started writing.
Okay.
Um, they were pretty generic and contrived, I suppose. But maybe by the time I was about 18, yeah, 17, 18, I started to write at least what I would consider to be meaningful songs, even if
Right.
they
Yeah.
weren't, they had elements of authenticity about them, and some of them were slightly unique. And then I just kept going from there, really. I joined a better band, a good band. I had formed my own band with some people that I met and stuff. And I actually got in what I would consider to be my first real band when I was about 19. And we had a van, and we did gigs, and we went outside of Durham, and we wrote together, and we rehearsed 3 times a week, practiced 3 times a week. We used to go to.
So
And
proper
then
band life.
yeah, well, I mean, all of that time when you're that young, I had a car by then, so I just would drive all day and night to get to anything that I thought was interesting. So,
Mm.
so that was it. But late teens, actually writing songs that that I would be happy playing on stage today. And actually, in a couple of cases, I am playing those songs on stage
I
occasionally.
was just going to say, is there anything that comes from that era that you still include in your act now?
Well, I mean, they dropped a lot of it dropped by the wayside, but you
Sure, of
know,
course, yeah.
I'm probably messing the timeline up a little bit here. But in the lockdown, in the second lockdown, I went back to my archives and dug out the tapes of an album that I never finished. We went into a prop studio in County Durham in about 1999 and made this record, but then the management deal we had fell apart. We didn't have the money. Kept the tapes in my mum's loft all these years. I sent them off and had them converted to digital, and we edited it and I released it. So that was unexpected, you know. But then
Yeah,
who had the 2021 they thought they were going to have, you know. So
that's
so I put
exactly
that
right.
record out, and then one song from that gets about, I think it gets 500 to 600 plays a day on Spotify. Still, it came out later in 2021, and that's quite a lot for me.
Mhm.
That number of plays on one song, so I put that in the set, and then after that I did a whole album. So later into 2021, um, I did a whole album of songs that I'd written or been involved in the writing of in the 90s when I was in these bands, these early bands. And I found these tapes when I was looking for material for the first reissue. And yes, I dug out 12 songs, four of which I'd written, and then another 8 which had kind of been either co-written or I was in the bands that were playing them. And there was an album called Origin Story, and yes, some stuff that I was really young to be writing. And yeah, and you know, like I played a show Tuesday night in South London, and 2 songs in the set were written like relatively early 90s. You
Yeah.
know, so that, I guess that tells me that you know, I found a good formula early on in terms of the sounds that I like to make. And then all of my life since then, you know, it's been my whole life's work to kind of refine the message and the delivery and the style, you know.
And I'm going to talk a bit more about it in a moment, but I noticed that you've written an article in ERB this month, which
Mhm.
says, you know, you have to be committed and genuine to yourself and do what you believe in.
Well, I mean, you know, the wider industry would suggest that you don't have to, but I would suggest that you'll feel better in the end if that's what you do.
I guess that's
I
a good
mean,
good approach. Yeah.
you know, it says in that article, but some of the stuff that I'm kind of touching on now, but it's about when you're a kid, you don't really know. And especially now, we're sitting at the wrong end of a whole bunch of great decades of rock music. So it's kind of hard not to be influenced by that. You know,
Absolutely.
the music I like is from about 1971, right? And before 1971, there was no music really like what was getting played in 1970. It had influences. It had influences in soul music and R&B music and blues music and, you know, folk music and you know, Spanish music and Indian music or whatever.
And
But the
everything.
kind
Yeah.
of the coming together of it in that period was unique. Well, you can't do that now because of Indom. So there's, you know, there are modern music stars I don't know anything about, but looking at it from a rock perspective, and especially in that era of kind of, you know, relative innocence. I mean, rock, you know, the music industry's never been innocent. So the performing chickens that they stand on the stage and actually do the wealth creation
Yeah.
are often quite naive.
Yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of impresarios and very well switched on businessmen that are quite prepared to exploit you for their own ends, you know. And that's always been the case. But you know, so it's easy to look at the picture of your favorite rock person and decide that that's how you want to behave, and you want to write songs like they wrote and look like they look and say what they said and drink what they drank, and you know, yada yada yada. And at some point, and that's cool, you know, it's all right for a bit, but at what point are you gonna bring yourself to that? And that's what I'm into, is bringing my whole self to it, and you know, because that's the innovation that I try and bring, is that it, you know, I don't want to be a stereotype. I want to be original, and I want to be the sum of everything that I ever did, really, and discard the stuff I don't like anymore and worked, you know, to develop it. But that's my music is like the authentic representation of yourself and coming from a position of knowledge about it.
I was reading something you said about your new album. Hang on a minute. Age has got to give way to vanity just for a second. I think you said somewhere that it's definitely a feeling of coming full circle with the album this time around.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you mean by that, really?
Well, you know, pursuant to that kind of conversation we were
Yeah.
having there about the origin story record. So in the lockdown, I tried to take a break from original songs because I had released a record in October 2020, which was like the last record I would say would be the last album of original music that had a concept that was like the latest evolution of my art, if you like. That was the
Yeah.
Clovis Limit Part 2 record. But then, you know, in 2021, I did other things. I did an acoustic version of some of them songs. I did this Taller Than record, which was the old one from the 90s. And then I did the origin story. So, you know, I was not lazy. I
No,
kept going
absolutely. Yeah,
and
kept
it was
yourself busy.
yeah, and like, you know, I have a really good fan base, really supportive people who help me out by pre-ordering and crowdfunding. And so I was just, you know, keeping myself busy and keeping them occupied with these little projects. And then it was always my intention to put a new record out this year, which had just happened, you know, to 2023, and the third Eye Open record. And you know, so when I was recording all of that other stuff, and I was looking for tracks for that, particularly for Origin Story, I've got a big tape library sitting up here,
Right.
you know, all cassettes and the CDRs, most of which have failed. The cassettes they're the useful ones because a lot of the digital media's kind of just expired.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got a new belt for my TAC tape player and dug these tapes out to find all these songs for Origin Story. And as I did, there are also a bunch of old tapes there, some of which had, you know, I mean, what I'd now do with my phone, I used to do with a cassette recorder, which is you switch it on and sketch. And I have some of those cassettes, and I have some rehearsal room stuff from old bands and whatever, and some ideas and some riffs and some live shows that were bootlegged and all that kind of thing. And there's stuff in there that was great that for whatever reason never got released or finished, or the big thing with some of it was that I didn't used to be able to sing like I can sing now. I mean, I always had a similar sounding voice, but the, you know, years on the tools, if you like, has given me the ability, and it's been it made a concerted effort to breaking the relationship between what my hands are doing and what my voice is doing. And it's really hard, but the goal was to be able to sort of, I don't know, for example, sing like Steven Tyler and play guitar like Joe Perry, but at the same time, and you
Right.
don't get that, you know, or like play guitar like Rich Robinson out the Black Rose, but sing like Chris Robinson out the Black Rose.
Yeah.
And guitar players sing wonderfully in some cases, but they sing like guitarists, and singers that aren't tied to having to play the kind of conventional rhythm with their hands sing differently, you know. And the ultimate for me would be like Otis Redding, the way that he ad libs and scats,
Yeah.
you know, over them things. And that's where Paul Rodgers and Chris Robinson and Steven Tyler and what get that kind of stuff from, you know. And I wanted to be able to do that while playing the guitar, and I couldn't do it. I can kind of do it now. I can do it to some degree anyway. So it allowed me to be able to like sing one way while playing the guitar a different way. And so so melodies that I couldn't have come up with when I played these little riffs, I can just do now, you know. So about half, I would say, I haven't done a head count, but probably about half of the new record consists of little snippets of old stuff. And then, you know, in some cases, I mean, there are definitely five completely new songs on that record that have never existed before. And three or four of the rest of them, you're talking about a riff or a lick or one or both, or I stuck a couple of bits together. And, you know, so a lot of the lyrics are new and the choruses are new and things like that, which is like the normal artistic development, really. There's no need to throw away a good idea, you know. So, but anyway, so the full circle thing
Oh,
is
okay.
that
Yeah.
because I, you know, when there's like been bits of my career, and the biggest change was moving down here from the northeast in the year 2000. And so when I moved down, I kind of left behind a bunch of songs. My band eventually followed me down here, and we kept going. But by then I'd written new songs, and the start of the band changed a little bit, and this, that, and the other. But the track "Fallen Down," for example, which is on Third Eye Open, which is resurrected from a demo that we did in the studio in 1999. And I probably just, I think what it was is that it, like, possibly the dynamics were challenging for the band live, but also the vocal was hard to sing while playing the guitar. Well, they've fixed that now, you see.
Right.
So putting that in there, um, and it, you know, and almost it's like hanging out with the young 20s version of me, being reminded of what music was turning me on back then. I now listen to some very different music, and I've come back to listening to some of the music that I kind of broke track with, just like what people call grunge bands, like Pearl Jam or Mother Love Bone
Yeah, yeah,
or Alice in Chains. I mean, they got called grunge bands. I don't know what a grunge band is, but I would say that they were just like rock bands. You
yeah,
know, they're
yeah,
just rock bands, really. They
yeah.
maybe give them a bit of an image thing to fit into the genre, but they were just rock bands.
Mm.
And I loved all that, you know. So being able to kind of revisit that, and having an audience that I think will, you know, my the people that return consistently to listen to and interact with me tend to be quite diverse, you know, and they're looking for that diversity, yeah,
Yeah.
to be, you know, they're looking for that within their music, and that's me, you know, inclusive, if you like. So being able to bring them to an audience that I'm pretty confident is going to accept it, that's a big part of it. So it's like I didn't know anybody when I was writing them songs in Durham, and they couldn't get a gig in a pub, you know.
No.
Whereas I got a bit of an audience for it now. And the other thing is that you know, these have been some really challenging times. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say the
Mm.
last 7 years, right? You know, because we're just about 7 years away from the Brexit vote, I think,
Mm.
if memory serves,
That's
from
right.
Trump coming
2016.
in.
Yeah,
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 you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So I forget the date, but it feels like it was spring. And I mean, you know, whatever side of that you come down on, that's not the debate here. But the debate here is that a lot of stuff, for whatever reason,
Life's a lot
is
different.
yeah, yeah, you know, it's expensive, that it's weird. So,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm really actually quite angry about that, and I feel cheated that people who said they have our best interest at heart have just had us over a barrel this whole time, and they're still filling their boots while telling us it's our own fault that things are this way. Then, and what better way to describe that in music but than to put out a kind of rocky album with lots of shouting, you know?
Yeah, yes,
And
I can see the point of that. Yeah. um, the the thing that you've just been talking about how life's changed for us over the last 7 years and all that sort of thing. That probably plays in a bit to some of the other stuff you do because I think people's mental health has become a big issue over the last decade or so, hasn't it? You know,
Mhm,
we all talk more about welfare at work and you know,
mhm.
mindfulness and well-being and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And I know that you work with a lot of young musicians and try to help with those sort of issues.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I guess what I would say is I think well-being has always been, or mental health, if you want to use the blanket term, has always been an issue. It just got ignored, you
I
know.
think that's right.
So,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know, I mean, I remember my dad, God rest his soul, you know, and he'd be paralyzed with anxiety, right? Well, we didn't use that word then, but paralyzed with it, with migraines, you know, and I
Yeah.
was just so stressed out. I mean, he was, but he never had an outlet for it.
Mm.
You know, he just lay on the sofa until he felt like he could continue, and then he got up, lit a Super King, and went out and did his job. You know,
People
and
just
then
expected you to pull yourself together, didn't they?
yeah, keep calm and carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I'm not saying that isn't a workable thing sometimes, because there's a line, you know, between it being something you can manage and something that you can't.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it's great that people are finally recognizing that you just can't keep going all the time, smashing yourself up. And if you take some personal responsibility for your health, for your mental health, the same way that you would if you gash your arm on a bit of barbed wire,
Yeah.
I'd like to think you'd wipe it down with some Dettol and put a bandage on it.
Yeah.
So, if you're paralyzed with anxiety and fear and doubt, and you can't sleep and everything's so overwhelming and your vision's blurred and you've got a ringing in your ears, don't have a drink or a joint or whatever. It's like, that's not the appropriate remedy. The appropriate remedy is to slow down and discharge some of this stuff through some relaxation, because I mean, it's okay if you, it's not okay. Even I do it now, the years I've been doing this, and even I try and rationalize it. And if you feel like that, it's not okay under any circumstances, right? And anything, if it's part of you, if it's a choice that you're making, if you are compelling yourself to do things that are leaving you so, unwell, stop it. Find a way, even, and you probably find that it doesn't take much change. It's like just a little bit of rest or a little bit of stop judging other people, judging your insides on somebody else's outsides, which is a big part of today's, social media driven perma crisis anxiety, omni shambles. It doesn't, I mean, I'm just as bad. I'm like your average human living at this time of life. There's nothing like godlike or Buddha-like or anything like that about me. I still look at my social media and get my nose out of joint because I'm not playing a gig that somebody else is playing, or I haven't got a car as nice as that, or, whatever. But I take a bit of time to decompress and come out of it. And so, there's loads that we can do to protect ourselves that don't involve the world changing. And that's kind of what I like to work with, That's what I like to work with for myself. And then I use that awareness, try and help others. And it's the same with music, like my music, I hold my music up and say, like, the world's a complicated place. Come and I hope, here's what I've designed for you to come and interact with that might hopefully help you with some of these difficult feelings, and the lyrics that I write, that either if it's like a story about my own life or a picture I'm trying to paint or whatever it is, it's offered up with the explicit intention of somebody being able to connect with it. And that's what I mean, when you say you go about, if you're just writing a song. I was talking to Jack Hutchinson this morning, we were talking about another guy that we both know, and his new album and the lyric, and it's just like, it's so minimal, it'd be like, oh baby, why did you do that to me? Oh baby, can't you see I'm falling apart? Why can't it be like it was at the start, or something? And it's like, okay, yeah, okay, I mean, actually that's probably better because I made some other bits up for it there, but it's not really giving anybody anything to kind of hang on to. It's not a light in the dark, is it? It's just, what it is a vehicle for that dude's guitar solo. And as he's doing it, he'll be pulling the face, the foot will be on the monitor, and it'll be busting all the shapes, and that works for lots of people, but it doesn't work for me.
And talking about being on stage, you're coming to us in Hastings on the 23rd of June.
I am. I like Hastings.
Yeah, we're the venue you're going to play at is right in the heart of Hastings Old Town, so
great,
in the quirky part of town.
Yeah, I like it down there.
And as you know, you're on the bill with Brave Rival. And, we're also excited to be bringing to Hastings. What else have you got sort of lined up? I mean, I noticed on your website you've got several gigs coming up in the near future, and I see as well that you're on a few festival flyers that I've seen. I think.
Got a bit, yeah. I mean, yes, we did the first show on Tuesday night of what you could call the launch tour for the album. I mean, it's modest, right? I'm not blowing it smoke up anybody's posteriors about that. It's not a 36-day full European tour, but we've one show just gone. There are a couple of others. They're all southeast actually this month. I did have how should we say this, a failed business relationship with somebody that was due to be, well, the expectation is they were going to provide the live work and I would do the
Right.
rest, and it for whatever reason didn't happen. So I left me a bit underexposed, I would say, on the live front for this year, unfortunately. So I'm not as busy as I would have liked to have been or was planning to be on the basis of the arrangements I had made. And I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible.
Yeah, you're doing really well.
but I was left somewhat lacking on that front, so I've been able to pull together a bit of stuff just to be able to give the record a bit of a shake out on around the town. And then there's a few bits in June, and obviously now the Brave Rival show with that as well. And I have started working with another chap who's helping out with the bookings, Brandon Wright, his name is, from 20 Music Roots. So he's my agent moving forward. So we are basically working together, planning, and happy to just take it. That's how we got this Brave Rival gig, and I believe we just agreed to do a second show with those guys in Worthing later in the year, and it's frustrating, man. I mean, everybody had their own trauma from the lockdown, and it was, for me, my personal frustration was that I'd spent a good few years from say 2015 through to 2020, and it really built up a nice head of steam in terms of my engagement with audiences and the industry, and I lost. I mean, I tell you what I didn't lose was I played 150 something shows in 2019. And my expectation was to do a similar number in 2020. Well, I didn't do that,
No.
Although I still did about 20 odd, because I managed to get a little tour in Eastern Europe, in the Czech Republic in September, just when there was like that little window when I got out and did some stuff, came back. 21 was a bit better. 22 was okay, but in terms of development, like, kind of career development, and being treading water, to be honest. And the plan was that we would raise it up again this year, and it may still happen. I mean, the record, what I will say is that the record's been wonderfully warmly received.
I've seen the reviews, and absolutely wonderful. I was listening to it all through again just before I came on with you this afternoon, and it's a really strong album.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, in all humility, the issue that I have is not in producing good records. The issue that I have is in engaging with the more staid and old-fashioned areas of the industry, which is mostly around agents and bookers, promoters and things like that. And those guys are very much like, hurry up and wait until we're ready. Timing is everything in every industry, and the music industry is no different on that front. So unfortunately, it's the timings haven't been so helpful for me for a little while. But with Brandon's help, hopefully there'll be an announcement made at the end of May, and I don't mind telling you now, that we'll be doing some acoustic. We're booking for and just about completing a solo UK tour for September.
Okay.
That will pick up early in the month and finishes like the day before Jack Hutchinson's first date. As we just found out yesterday when he published all his tour dates, it's like anybody would think we planned that, because we're good mates, we speak all the time,
Yeah.
But we didn't plan that. So I'm going to do solo run, and then then from that, the plan is to put the tour I'd like to be doing now, hopefully in February of next year. So maybe 16-day UK tour, possibly double headline with another artist friend of mine or something like that, or an American artist or whatever. So that's kind of me.
We'll certainly look out for that. But as far as See You There promotions are concerned, we're excited about you coming to Hastings.
Yeah, me too.
We're looking forward to seeing you on the 23rd of June. And thank you very much for coming along and chatting to me this afternoon.
It's been a pleasure. It's been really interesting to answer your questions.
Thank you. And we'll see you on the 23rd of June then, Mike.
You will.
Thanks a lot.